Imagine you are standing outside at night. The air is still, the sky is clear, and above you, the moon hangs exactly where it always has. Silent, familiar, comforting, you've seen it your entire life. A pale guardian in the dark. But tonight, something feels off. You blink, and it's gone. No explosion, no warning, no fading light, just gone. And in that moment, without a single sound, the Earth becomes a different planet. The darkness hits first. Not just darkness, but a kind you've never experienced before. The moon doesn't just light the night, it shapes it. It softens shadows, it gives depth to the world after sunset. Without it, the sky becomes brutally empty. The stars feel sharper, colder, more distant, and the night feels wrong. Animals go silent, no wolves howling, no nocturnal rhythm. Something ancient inside the planet hesitates. Because for billions of years, the moon has been there, guiding tides, stabilizing Earth, quietly holding chaos in place. And now, that balance is broken. But here's the problem. At first, nothing dramatic happens. No earthquakes, no storms, no instant destruction. In fact, the first few hours feel almost peaceful. You might even think nothing has changed. But the Earth doesn't react instantly. It drifts into disaster, slowly, silently, inevitably. The ocean is the first to notice. Not you, not the sky, the ocean. Because the moon isn't just decoration. It pulls on Earth with gravity every second. Every tide you've ever seen exists because of it. Right now, somewhere along the coastline, the water hesitates. The tide should be rising, but it isn't. It stalls, like it forgot what to do. Then it begins to move, but weaker, slower, confused, because now only the sun is pulling the oceans. And the sun is much farther away. Its grip is weaker. Within days, the tides shrink to a fraction of what they used to be. The great breathing of the planet, the rise and fall of oceans, starts to die. Coastal ecosystems collapse. Tidal zones, places where life evolved for millions of years, begin to rot. Creatures that depend on the rhythm of the sea lose their timing, and they start to die. But it gets worse. The moon doesn't just move the oceans, it stabilizes the Earth itself. Right now, as you stand there under an empty sky, something massive has already begun. The tilt of the Earth is no longer stable. You don't feel it. Not yet. But the planet has lost its anchor. For billions of years, the moon acted like a counterweight, keeping Earth's axis steady at about 23.5 degrees. That tilt is why we have seasons, why climates are predictable, why life can exist. Without the moon, the Earth begins to wobble. At first, it's subtle, a fraction of a degree, then more and more, until entire climates begin to shift. Deserts creep into fertile land. Winters grow longer. Summers grow brutal. Weather patterns twist into something unfamiliar. And this is where things change. Because the wobble doesn't stop. Mars already went through this. Scientists believe that without a large moon to stabilize it, Mars's axis shifted wildly over time, turning it from a potentially habitable world into the frozen desert we see today. And now, Earth is following the same path. Within decades, maybe sooner, the tilt could swing dramatically. Imagine waking up in a world where your region suddenly faces months of continuous sunlight. No night, just relentless heat, or worse, months of darkness. Temperatures plummet. Crops fail, entire ecosystems collapse. Human civilization starts to strain, but that's not even the worst part, because while the planet is slowly losing its balance, something else is happening above you. The night sky is changing in a way you can't ignore. Without the moon, the Earth is exposed, not physically, but gravitationally. The moon acted as a kind of shield. not blocking objects, but influencing their paths. Asteroids, space debris, objects that might have passed safely by, now behave differently. Their trajectories shift unpredictably. NASA has tracked near-Earth objects for decades. Some of them pass dangerously close, but are subtly affected by the moon's gravity. Remove the moon, and those calculations change. Tiny differences in space become massive changes over time, and eventually, something that was never supposed to hit Earth does. But here's the problem. You won't know when. Days pass, then weeks, the world begins to feel unstable. Tides are weak, weather is erratic, nights are unnaturally dark, but humans adapt. We always do. Cities light up brighter than ever. Technology compensates, at least at first, but deep beneath the surface. In the oceans, in the atmosphere, in the rotation of the planet itself, the damage is compounding. Because the moon does one more thing. Something almost invisible. Something you've never felt, but something that has protected you every second of your life. It slows the Earth's rotation. Without it, the planet begins to spin differently. Right now, Earth's rotation is gradually slowing because of tidal friction caused by the moon. Without that drag, the rules change. Over long periods, the rotation can become unstable. Days could shorten or shift unpredictably, and even small changes in rotation have catastrophic effects on wind patterns, ocean currents, and global climate systems. Storms grow stronger, jet streams shift, weather becomes violent, chaotic, unfamiliar, and this is where things spiral, because now everything is breaking at once. The oceans are dying, the climate is unstable, the axis is shifting, the sky is darker, and space itself is becoming more dangerous. There is no single disaster, no single moment you can point to and say, this is when it all ended. Instead, the Earth is slowly becoming unlivable, and you are still standing there, looking up, at a sky that feels emptier than it should be, because something ancient is missing, something that was never supposed to leave. And deep down, you feel it. This planet was not designed to be alone. You wake up weeks later, and the world no longer feels predictable, not broken, yet, but unstable. Like something is constantly shifting just beneath the surface. The nights are darker than you remember. Not just visually, but psychologically. Without the moon, there's no rhythm to the sky, no marker of time, no slow, comforting cycle of phases. Time itself begins to feel off. But here's the problem. Humans evolved with the moon, your biology, your sleep, your hormones, even subtle behavioral patterns are tied to cycles you never consciously noticed. Now those cycles are gone. Sleep disorders spike across the planet. People report vivid dreams, anxiety, a strange sense of disconnection. It's subtle at first, but it spreads because the moon didn't just shape the oceans. It shaped you, and now your body doesn't know what world it's living in anymore. Meanwhile, the oceans are getting quieter, not calm, dead. The tides, once powerful enough to reshape coastlines, are now weak and sluggish. The constant mixing of ocean layers, driven partly by tidal forces, begins to slow. And that mixing is what distributes oxygen. Without it, parts of the ocean begin to suffocate. Massive regions turn into what scientists call dead zones, areas where oxygen is so low that most life simply cannot survive. You don't see it happening. But beneath the surface, entire ecosystems are collapsing. Fish die in silence, coral reefs begin to fade, and the creatures that survive start behaving differently because oxygen isn't the only thing changing. Temperature gradients shift. Currents weaken, the global conveyor belt of the ocean. The the system that regulates Earth's climate, starts to break down. And this is where things change, because now the atmosphere follows. Ocean currents don't just move water, they move heat. Without them, regions of the planet begin to overheat, while others freeze. Europe, once warmed by Atlantic currents, starts to cool dramatically. Winters become harsher, longer, more unforgiving. At the same time, equatorial regions begin to trap heat. Temperatures rise to extremes. Humans are not built to survive, and storms become monsters, not frequent but devastating. When they form, they linger longer, move slower, dump more energy. Hurricanes stall over cities for days. Floods don't recede. Entire regions become uninhabitable, not because of a single event, but because recovery becomes impossible. But it gets worse, because the Earth itself is beginning to respond. Without the Moon's gravitational pull, the stress distribution across Earth's crust subtly changes. It's not immediate, but over time, fault lines begin to behave differently. Earthquakes occur in places that were once considered stable. Volcanic activity increases in unpredictable patterns. Scientists struggle to model it, because the system they understood no longer exists. And somewhere deep beneath your feet, pressure is building in ways no one fully understands. But that's not even the worst part. Look up again. The sky is still empty, but now it feels hostile, because without the moon, nights are darker, but space is brighter. Not visually, but dynamically. Objects that were once influenced by the moon's gravity now drift differently through near-Earth space. Satellites begin to experience slight orbital instabilities. Tiny deviations, nothing alarming at first, but over time, those deviations grow. Some satellites drift off course, others collide, and slowly. The infrastructure surrounding Earth begins to fail. GPS systems glitch, communications flicker, weather prediction becomes less reliable. Right when you need it most, because the storms are getting worse. And now you can't see them coming. But here's the problem. Humanity doesn't collapse all at once. It stretches, it adapts, it tries to hold on. Cities invest in artificial lighting to replace the moon's absence. Agriculture shifts indoors. New technologies attempt to stabilize climate systems. For a while, it almost works. But every solution introduces new strain. Energy demand skyrockets, resources thin out, and global coordination begins to fracture because different regions are experiencing completely different disasters. There is no unified crisis. There are thousands of them, all happening at once. And then, the axis shifts further. At first it was subtle, now it's undeniable. The sun's path across the sky changes in ways people can see. Seasons lose their meaning. In some regions, the sun barely sets. In others, it barely rises. Ice begins to form in places that were once warm. Heat waves consume places that were once temperate. Entire countries begin to migrate. Not out of choice, but necessity, bodies collapse under pressure. Resources become conflict, and civilization starts to crack, but it gets worse, because the deeper consequence of losing the moon is time, specifically Earth's long-term stability in space. The moon didn't just stabilize the present, it protected the future. Without it, gravitational interactions with other planets, especially Jupiter, begin to have a stronger influence over Earth's orientation. Tiny nudges, over years, then decades, then centuries, until the tilt becomes extreme. Not 23 degrees, but 40-60, even more. At that point, the concept of a stable climate disappears entirely. The planet becomes chaotic, unpredictable, hostile to complex life. And this is where the true horror settles in. Because nothing that's happening is fast enough to escape. You don't get a single catastrophic ending. No asteroid wiping everything out. No explosion, no final moment. Instead, you live through it. You watch it happen. You adapt. You struggle. You survive. Just long enough to understand what's been lost. A stable world, a predictable sky, a silent companion that held everything together, without you ever realizing it. And now it's gone. Forever, you stand outside again. Years later, the sky is still empty. No phases, no glow, no presence, just stars, cold, distant, indifferent, and you realize something that no human before you ever had to face. The moon wasn't just a part of the sky. It was part of the system that made your existence possible, and without it, Earth is no longer a home. It's a transition, a slow drift towards something else, something harsher, something unfamiliar, something that doesn't care if you survive. And deep down, you finally understand. The universe was never built to keep things the way you need them to be. Years pass, not peacefully, not cleanly, but slowly enough that you're still here to witness it. And that's what makes it worse, because by now, the illusion is gone. This is no longer the Earth you were born into. This is something else. The sky has changed in ways you can't ignore anymore. Constellations don't sit where they used to. The sun rises at angles that feel wrong. Subtly at first, now unmistakably. The axis tilt has drifted far beyond anything civilization was designed to handle. Some regions haven't seen a true night in months. Others haven't seen daylight, and human biology is breaking under it. But here's the problem. This isn't just about light or darkness. It's about energy. Photosynthesis begins to fail in entire regions. Plants can't adapt fast enough to endless day or endless night. Crops collapse, not globally at once, but region by region, like lights flickering out across the planet. Food chains snap. And once they do, they don't come back. You start to understand something terrifying. Extinction doesn't need violence. It just needs imbalance. The oceans, what's left of them, are no longer the blue, living systems they once were. They've stratified into layers that barely interact. The surface heats, the depths suffocate. Methane begins to seep from ocean floors in greater amounts, released from destabilized clathrates. A gas you can't see, a gas you can't stop, but one that traps heat far more effectively than carbon dioxide. And this is where things change. Because now the warming accelerates. Not gradually, exponentially, feedback loops kick in. Ice melts, reducing reflectivity, causing more heat absorption. More methane releases, more warming, more collapse. The planet begins to run away from equilibrium. And there is no system left to stabilize it, because the one silent stabilizer is gone. But it gets worse. Earth's magnetic field, already complex and not fully understood, begins to behave strangely, not because of the moon directly, but because everything inside the planet is shifting. Changes in rotation, internal dynamics, and energy distribution begin to ripple all the way to the core. The magnetic field fluctuates, weakens in places, and when it does, the sky reveals something new. Radiation, solar particles that were once deflected now slip through more easily. Auroras appear in places they never should. Beautiful, terrifying, because they're not just lights, they're warnings. The sun is reaching you more directly now, and prolonged exposure doesn't burn you instantly, it does something worse. It accumulates, DNA damage rises, cancer rates climb. Electronics fail more frequently under solar storms. And every time the sun lashes out, you feel it. But that's not even the worst part, because the longer Earth exists without the moon, the more chaotic its motion becomes. The wobble is no longer subtle. It's erratic, chaotic in the mathematical sense. Small changes leading to massive, unpredictable outcomes. Scientists can no longer model the future accurately, not because they lack intelligence, but because the system itself has become unknowable. And when a planet becomes unpredictable, survival becomes temporary. You look at the stars again, and for the first time, you notice something you never paid attention to before. Near-Earth space is more active, not constantly, but enough. More objects pass closer than they used to. Some burn up harmlessly, others don't. Impact events, once rare, become part of the new reality, not extinction level, but frequent enough to remind you. There is no shield anymore, no gravitational partner redirecting danger. You are exposed, and this is where the final realization begins to settle in. Humanity tried to fight it. Of course it did. There were attempts, massive, desperate attempts. Proposals to build artificial satellites large enough to mimic the moon's stabilizing effects. Ideas to redirect asteroids into orbit. Projects to engineer climate control on a planetary scale. Some worked. Briefly. Most didn't. Because you weren't replacing a light in the sky. You were trying to replace a system billions of years in the making. A system so precisely balanced, you never even noticed it existed, and now you feel every missing piece. Civilization doesn't end in a single moment. It thins, cities shrink, then vanish, knowledge fragments. Not lost, but scattered. Survival becomes local, temporary, fragile, and eventually, the idea of a global human civilization becomes something that belongs to the past. Like the moon itself. You stand outside one last time. Older now, the air feels different, heavier, or maybe it's just you. The sky stretches endlessly above, filled with stars that feel closer than they should. And yet, it has never felt more empty, because there is a shape missing. A presence your mind still tries to fill in. You can almost see it. A faint circle where the moon used to be. But it's not there. It will never be there again. And in that silence, you understand something that no generation before you ever had to face. Earth was never self-sufficient. It was part of a relationship, a balance, a fragile gravitational dance between two bodies, pot one that made life possible and kept chaos away. Remove one partner, and the dance doesn't continue, it collapses. The tides fade, the axis drifts, the climate fractures. The sky's empty and life, slowly, quietly, loses its place, not because of a single disaster, but because the universe doesn't promise stability. It only allows it for a while. And as you stare into the endless dark, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The moon was never just a companion. It was a condition. And without it, you were never meant to last.